it going? Alrighty, so if I could have our panelists come up to the stage while we do a quick little hello to everybody. I just want to thank everyone for coming out on Friday night. I know you guys all have some fun plans after this, hopefully. But we appreciate you coming out to meet some of our candidates and talk to the people that could be representing you in the future. So as they make their way up here on stage, basically we've got a couple different people from a couple different levels of campaign. So Jorge Fernandez running for State Rep District 50, Sharon Tucker, who's our Allen County Councilwoman District 1, Kathy Zuha, who's running for State Senate District 15, Kyle Miller, who's running for State Rep District 81, and Courtney Trich is running for 3rd District Congress. So can we give it a hand for all of our candidates? And Phil J. Quinn, of course.
Come share a chair with me.
Bring your own chair. Sorry, we had a couple of people cancel last minute, so my numbers were off. Mayor Henry sends his apologies, as well as Councilman Hines and Councilman Paddock. They all had some different engagements. Councilman Paddock had an event with the rail that he's trying to get through Fort Wayne, so he had to go represent that. Councilman Hines was going to be out of town, and the mayor was tasked with taking care of his grandkids tonight. So we can all appreciate that. So with that, as we get started, I'm going to open the floor up to all of you to ask some questions to our candidates. Just to let you know, Courtney will be leaving a little bit early because she has a long, big day tomorrow with her story event, which is going to be very exciting. So if any of you guys have any questions, we have a microphone up here that Misty will be taking around to you. So if you do have a question, just raise your hand and then we will go around the room.
Testing.
Just turn it on. Is that on? Yeah. Cool.
Testing.
Cool. Cool. Awesome.
Test.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, good. All right, I have a question. The conversation now is about having handguns or guns in the classroom. I'm just curious as to how many of you how are you feeling about that? I mean, obviously I'm against it. I work with the school system and definitely not a good idea. So I'm just wondering about, I want to hear what you guys are feeling on that.
Okay, so I'm sorry, the question is guns in the classroom?
Yes.
I'm against arming our teachers, and I was just watching something the other day that was basically saying the more that we make our schools look and feel like prisons, the more that's what our youth are going to think is expected of them, and that's going to affect our children, our future workforce, and that's not the direction I would like to see our schools go, personally.
I think that after all that's been going on since Columbine and Sandy Hook and now what happened in Florida, when I heard that the fix is to arm teachers with handguns, I thought, are you kidding me? That's your answer? That's your creative answer? That's the best you got? I'm a teacher. Can you arm me with some pencils? And when a student breaks a chair, can we get a chair that they can sit in? Can you arm me with some supplies so that I can actually teach? I personally, I'll be honest with you, I can shoot a gun, I know how, I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not bringing a gun to school. I don't want to be responsible for that. And also, our National Teachers Union ran a poll, and the respondents, they had 77% were female, because 77% of us are female. And it was overwhelming that they didn't want to be responsible to carry guns, even though over 63% of all of the respondents owned guns. I just don't think that that's the fix. There has to be another fix.
Yes. Thanks. I'm an educator. I taught in Fort Wayne Community Schools for 5 years. I think it's a bad idea. I think we need to leave it up to the trained security professionals. We had a school resource officer in the South Florida situation. He didn't go in for 4 minutes. That's an issue, obviously. But the idea of having school resource officers, having trained personnel in the schools, is a good idea. It's something that they're ready to respond. They should be ready to respond. They said that school resource officer was trained to confront the gunman. I heard a statistic that 19% of New York police officers admit that only 19% of their shots actually are on target. So you can imagine a teacher dealing with students that they're trying to protect, having to deal with that kind of situation, a very chaotic situation, and it's not a good recipe. Leave the teachers to have the teaching responsibilities, to focus on dealing with the students in a chaotic situation like that, and the school resource officers, other public safety officials should be dealing with the security. Thank you.
Very quickly, Bill J. Quinn, State Rep, District 80. We obviously discussed some issues with regards to guns at the State House this past session. Let me first, if I can, kind of a kudos to you all, yourself, in the audience, with the actions that you have taken with regards to your phone calls, your letters, lobbying on behalf of voting and encouraging others to not support the bills that we saw here at the State House recently. My sister is a retired teacher. She just joked the other day that she has trouble sometimes working the intercom system, let alone trying to be able to fire a weapon. Yeah. You bring up a good point regarding the police officers who go through hours and hours of training and only 19%. I mean, just imagine we're going to have to take teachers away from doing the things that they want to do, train them to be even better teachers than they already are, to now train them. It's just ridiculous. And there were some other things just to touch on, a couple other issues. But before I do that, folks should check out the Boston Globe, this morning's paper. They have, I think it's seven different ways that Massachusetts laws have reduced gun violence in the state of Massachusetts. And according to their statistics analysis, if Indiana had those same 7 laws, I think it's 7 or 6, that we could reduce the number of gun deaths by, I think, around 760. They go by each state, taking into their formula, into the laws that Massachusetts has, if they were applied to these different states. It's a really very interesting article to read, so I would suggest you do that. We had one of the bills that did not make it, one part of a bill was to look, I think, around $5 to $7 million forwarded to the schools in the state to look at security measures and things like that. So I imagine that'll be one of the things we take up in the upcoming special session. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Sharon Tucker, Allen County Council 1st District, and I do not believe that arming teachers is the proper way to go. I do, however, believe that making sure that we have funds set aside for resource officers is the better way that we should go. And we've done that on County Council. We made sure that all of our schools that wanted them have had opportunities to partner with us and with the Sheriff's Department to be able to have resource officers in the building. I also feel like that if you're going to get on an airplane and have to declothe and go in barefooted, and they figured out a way to be safe from that because one individual came onto a plane with a bomb, that they can figure out a way how to protect our kids and make the proper decisions to go there. But I don't think that having guns in school is the way to go about it. And as a mother, and as an African American woman, it scares me even more to even have the rhetoric of thinking of arming people, because I know the climate that we're in right now. And if we're just flat out honest, we're at a time where patience is short. And we don't want the wrong people to lose their temper, and our children then become a different kind of victim. And school should be a place that you should go to learn, and then you should go to be able to have fun with those that are your classmates, and of course, it can be challenging, but it shouldn't be a place where you should go and worry. And I was listening to a show today where a mom was on there in tears because her daughter on a daily basis is concerned about whether or not she's safe to go to school. And that shouldn't be our concern. Their concern should be whether they get a C in algebra or whether they get a B, and of course, if the boy's gonna circle yes or no on the paper that I like you. That's what the concern should be. It shouldn't have to be about whether or not they have guns.
Right.
Hey everyone, my name is Kyle. I'm running for state representative in District 81. I'm not going to say anything different than anybody else said. My wife's a teacher, and I don't want her armed. She did not. She has known that she has wanted to be a teacher ever since she was very young, and I don't remember any part of that rationale being protecting students with guns. So it's a terrible idea, but quite frankly, what it is a distraction. It's a way of, we're all talking about it now. We're not talking about, some of us are, but the national discourse is focused on arming teachers and whether that's a good idea. What we really need to be discussing is gun control. What we really need to be discussing is ways, resource officers, other ways to make schools safer. The prospect of arming teachers is a way to distract from that very important conversation.
It's also a way for NRA to make more money because they'll sell more guns.
Yeah.
So I've got a quick question I think everyone's interested in hearing, specifically for Courtney as she's running in a district that's been traditionally red. So we all hear about this blue wave that's sweeping the nation. We flipped 40 state leg seats, we flipped a Senate seat in Alabama, we just flipped a congressional district a couple weeks ago. So what is that, I guess, how do you as a candidate feel, seeing those elections in the state we're in right now?
Well, I know there's going to be a blue wave because Brandon made me a button that says there's going to be one. It is an awesome time to be a part of what's happening. For all of the negative things that are happening, so many more people have gotten involved, have stood up, have decided that we can't stand by the wayside anymore. And so it has been so neat to be a part of that. As someone myself who has never run for office before, I've never declared a party before, this is all very new to me, and it is amazing for me to see not only the initial momentum we had when we launched last July, but to see how after every election, like you mentioned, it growing and growing and growing. And I am very proud to say that our grassroots campaign, with help from awesome people like yourselves, we were one of only about 40 candidates in the country that outraised the incumbent last quarter. And that is in this very red district. And the fact that we did that is amazing. And I say we did that because we did that. So thank you. And I just want to say it's going to get tough. This wave is going to be choppy to ride. So be prepared. I've been both kind of shocked and excited, I guess, to see that the chairman of the Republican Party, as well as my opponent, have been on television. They're sending out emails about me. And it's March. And this is supposed to be this red district where I'm not supposed to have a chance. I haven't even won the primary yet. And so that, to me, shows there is a blue wave coming, and it's going to be awesome to see.
Anyone on that stage? Yeah, state legislative.
As a candidate, I am not focusing on the blue wave because I think whether we have a blue wave, whether we don't have a blue wave, in general, I think what we've lost is the art of going door to door. It's the art of really talking to people. Phone banks are great, things like that, but what we really need to get back to is going door to door. And as Courtney was saying, I think that, hold your fire, I think that we will look back on the Trump presidency as a blessing. It really, as Democrats, it brought us together. And it's no longer enough just to sit on the sidelines. It's no longer enough just to assume that somebody else is going to take the reins. Our time is now, and the time is now to make change.
I just want to say that this this year is an off-year election. It's a little, if you look at turnout numbers, it's different from 2016, which was a presidential year. And in 2014, we had the lowest voter turnout in the entire country in Indiana, at 30%. So we can't afford to be complacent and just expect, a rising tide to lift the candidates that need to be in office, which are the ones sitting right here, to get us into office, to get us where we need to be. Right? So there are positive developments nationwide, but we need people to come out and vote. We need people to be aware of the off-year election. We need everyone to participate and show a strong mandate for what we are doing here. Thanks.
Any questions in the audience? Pending? Anybody?
I'm wondering if you are fine with how much homes the population of homeless people and how much places they're allowed to camp, because we have a lot there, and I know we have enough room for, instead of parks and stuff, we could put more houses there.
The homeless population in Indiana has doubled in the last 10 years. I tutor at one of the homeless shelters, Vincent Village, and I have been tutoring there for 6 years, and I keep seeing how they have waiting lists in all of these interfaith homeless shelters. I also have a close friend of mine, Sally Siegerstam, who works with the homeless community, and I know that she goes out and she feeds and she tries to give them socks and blankets and sleeping bags. Am I answering your question? Okay.
What's your name, son?
My name is Brian Deacon.
First name?
Brian.
Brian, you posed an excellent question, and you posed one that we as adults are struggling to answer, to be honest with you. We all think we know the answer, but bottom line, we've made so many concessions for so many other things that we as elected officials, I would say that there are times where we failed and we overlook what's really important, and those are the people who need us. I was listening to Jorge say, we need you guys to come out and vote. We need you guys to come out. And we're always asking that. Every election time we're asking, come out and vote, but we rarely say what we're going to do for that vote. What are we going to give you back for that vote? And those are the things that we need to be listening for. We find funding to do all kinds of activities, and we find funding to do all kinds of buildings downtown. And honestly, we need to look into how we can find funding to help those individuals. I think, is it South Bend or Pete Buttigieg? They've shown us the way that it can be done, and that's what we as elected officials need to figure out, honestly, for you here. I don't have the answer as to why we haven't done it, but I do know that we have footprints now from other cities within Indiana that can help us break into doing it. And that should be something that as elected officials we should look into.
I sit on the Brightpoint board, which used to be CANI, Community Action Northeast Indiana. Of course, there have some affiliates as well. And we had a gentleman who gave us kind of a mission moment last night. It was very touching, from Auburn. And a homeless man who lost his 2 daughters because of that. One of the staff of Brightpoint was had been introduced to him, and make a long story short, got him into the program at Brightpoint, and they got him an apartment, took him to Mustard Seed, I think, with the furniture, and I'm telling you, he said this is the greatest feeling he's ever had. He was fine not having any furniture at all. He just wanted a place to lay his head, and he really did. It was very touching. He now sees his children more often, and the 2 girls, 11 and 12, they're doing very well. And I would love to see us, Sharon's exactly right, work with some of the agencies like Brightpoint, CANI, to help them as much as possible so we can assist more folks. because they need our help. And I know it's one of the pleasures I get about being on that particular board. Many of you do the same thing. And the more things like that we can do to pitch in, help make us a better community.
And some people in our community need a little bit of an attitude adjustment when it comes to homelessness, because some people believe that, well, they did it to themselves. But I know of families where one of the parents perhaps had a really bad medical condition and they lost their house and they needed that help.
I think there's a lot of attitude adjustment that needs to happen as far as us remembering that we're a community and we are a country. And one of the most moving things that I've ever participated in was the Brightpoint poverty simulation, where you are given a role and you have to figure out how to fend for yourself and how to make ends meet and how to navigate the system. And so for all those folks that think that you can just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, that's really hard when you don't even have the boots to start with, and trying to understand the system. And so I would say from a federal level, we have to figure out how to streamline those processes to help people get back on their feet. And we cannot continue to pass legislation that continues to increase the income inequality in our country, because that is going to add to the problem, not take away from it.
I just wanted to add real quick, the problem of homeless veterans is unacceptable. It's something that's come up to our current congressman, the people that has spoken to him about coming back and having to deal with the difficulties of of personal finances when they went and they served our country. If we can afford to increase the military budget for to wage war, we should be able to take care of our veterans here at home, and that's something that's more a federal issue, but it's something that the state has a part in as well.
Okay, before I can go on, Owen, will you do me a favor? Will you bring me my coat? I'm freezing. I know y'all might be fine, but I am so cold and I'm not going to pretend anymore. That chair right there, the back one.
This one?
Yeah. Thank you.
She said it's hers.
I'm just keeping it real. Thank you so much.
Ms. Tritch, I heard you use the term grassroots. We're dealing with a major violence problem on the southeast side of Fort Wayne right now, and I happen to be blessed enough to work with a lot of people who understand that in order to solve that problem, it has to be kind of a grassroots type of approach. There are several organizations on the southeast side of town who work relentlessly to try to make changes in the community as far as dealing with the violence. And they are having the hardest time getting the support and the funding that they're needing from the city, from the state, from the county. Can any of you guys speak on some ideas or some methods that you might be able to introduce that might help people like myself who, I just want to give back, I just want to make changes where I've been a part of the problem, God has blessed me with some clarity, and now I'm trying to do things to show my community that we can. And so, we're just looking for some help.
I support you, but if you're talking about city and state, I want to make sure I give the right people the opportunity.
Yeah, I know the Mayor Henry has a commission on youth male that I think has been doing pretty well. Maybe you disagree. I looks like they've been fairly active. Yeah, I don't know about maybe success yet. We were just talking about some other organizations with respect to homelessness and others. I believe that churches in the community play a major role in that answer to your question. There are other initiatives. I like the idea of putting money. Let's first, I think, think about putting money into trying to, let's figure out what the answers are and things like that. But, you know, I always think the most important thing is a well-paying job. I really do. We were just hearing about affordable wages and earnings. To me, that's the most important thing that we can do as elected officials, legislators, is provide the economic incentive tools so that cities can work and lure businesses here to the city and to the state, and make sure that folks are working and making a great wage with great benefits, and I think that can go a long way toward curbing the violence that you're talking about.
Can I just ask, what would you like to see happen?
So, to be honest with you, Courtney, a lot of what has to happen, and I want to be, you know, honest and straightforward. A lot of what has to happen has to start with the community itself. There has to be a lot of acceptance of responsibility. There has to be a lot of growing up. But outside of that, there are agencies that are, like I said, grassroots. And when I say that, I say, and I'll just use myself for example, people who have found other people within the community who are like-minded, who are trying to move forward, and who want to try to transfer their knowledge or their love back to the community in different ways. A lot of what happens in the southeast side of Fort Wayne is I call it the rationale, the way that people think, the way the community thinks, the way that the young people think. And so I would just like to see, for an organization like Bloom Project, who is hands-on, who are walking children through school, who are mentoring these young men and turning them into, they have what they call a King's Feast. And they build them up, and they walk with them, and they support them, and they show them opportunities. Well, for a person like myself who lives check to check, you know what I mean, I got to work 60 hours a week, so it doesn't give me the time that I have to be able to spend, that I need to be able to spend with these young people to mentor. It almost has to be a full-time job. And so, you know, there has to be some type of funding to help that, because whenever you get done with it, bills have to be paid. You know what I mean? A lot of these kids just need some people that can spend outside of the household.
So let me help you out just a little bit, okay? Because you know I'm born and raised Southeast Fort Wayne, lived all my life, fights for Southeast Fort Wayne, Allen County, 6th District. We all have a responsibility, not just the residents of the 6th District or Southeast Fort Wayne, but the city has a responsibility as well. And no one gets a pass, right? Everybody has something to do with this community. It just doesn't fall on the hands of the elected officials or on the individual, right?
Right.
We have to figure out how to work together. In government, the process is set up that the money is slated into buckets, right? And each bucket has its own path that you can draw out of. And so we think that, hey, we can just take money and put it here, or we can just take money and put it here. And so the city right now is taking the money from that bucket and deposit it into, say, City United, right? But then there are also corporate partners, and there are also other individuals that help participate with that effort. Because there's only so many dollars, then we have to do what you talked about, that grassroots, where we now have to go to ourselves and say, to those churches and to those other organizations and say, can you help us, right? But you and I would agree, since we both South and love it, that those organizations have come and gone. And so which one do you believe, right? Now we know Foundation has been around and is doing an immaculate job and has done it for many, many years. And so sometimes I think people are more apt to support the organization when there's some stick and stay, when they see that you're doing it, whether they help you or not. And sometimes we just gotta stop taking our hat and hand to master and go and do it ourselves,
Right.
because they're not gonna do it for us, right?
Right.
So, and you're doing that. But at the other time, we still have the responsibility to hold those people who have been elected to duly support and protect us feet to the fire. And when you were doing your tape before, you heard me say that. Hold us to the fire, because that is our job. So we should always be. We had it in Councilman Glenn Hines. He was always and is always fighting for our district. But the thing that we have to remember is the 6th district isn't the highest crime rate. When we have our seat meetings and they bring out the information on the crime rate, our crime rate has decreased. Other areas have increased beyond the 6th district, but we catch the bad rap because we're the stepchild right now. But that's got to change, and we're going to demand it to change with groups like yours and with people that we put in place, that we hold their feet to the fire to make sure that we're doing what you said you wanted us to do when you vote for us.
Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing? Yeah. All right, my name is Linda Brooks, and I am a candidate for Indiana State Representative, the 80th District, and I just wanted to elaborate back on the homeless situation, because what County Councilwoman Ms. Tucker said was exactly on point. I mean, what we're gonna have to do is get more involved with our homeless. And for many years, I sat at City Council, week after week, for many years, and went to the podium with Sally Silverstone. I've seen her work effortlessly to help our homeless. And, you know, now it's election time, once again. And I noticed I would get Sally's back at those City Council meetings when she would advocate for the homeless. But what I'm seeing here tonight is some of the comments that's being made. Somehow I never saw any of those comments being made at City Council to back Sally up. So what I'm saying here now is it's time to go into action. Thank you.
With that, I want to thank Courtney for coming out. She's got a long day tomorrow, so we can all give a hand for Courtney for coming out. All right. Any other questions in the audience? Anybody?
It was for Courtney. Do you have a second, Courtney? Sure. There's a lot of apathy in the voters, and we don't feel like our voice is being heard.
Yeah.
And about 50 to 70% of candidates, once they reach Congress, their time is spent dialing for dollars. What is going to be your answer to that, so that we, the people, have our one vote, one voice?
Is there a microphone? I can be really loud. I think that that's a really valid point that you're making, and I will tell you that the thing that disappoints me the most about running for office is how much time I have to spend fundraising. Because the number one thing that would change elections in this country is campaign finance reform. So I completely agree with you. And there's going to have to be a balance, and what that makes is for long days, because I want to understand the issues. So, for example, with healthcare, we had a healthcare town hall where we had about 150 people from the public come, and we invited medical experts to come, and we wanted to hash out ideas. I don't have to do that right now, right? I could just be dialing for dollars. But that's not what's important to me. What is important to me is understanding what the issues are and what actual solutions are, because my background is in economic development, and I spent the last 10 years working with business leaders and elected officials and educators, sitting down around a table and saying, how do we actually solve these problems here in the region? And now that's what the mentality we need in Washington. So it's going to take a lot of time, it's going to take a lot of effort, but you need someone who cares about problem solving and isn't doing it to get ahead in their career. And my passion is for this community. So I hope that answers your question.
Do you have any solutions for that? Because like when
Solutions for which? I'm sorry.
For Citizens United came in and the Supreme Court overturned the laws that were put in by Congress. So what is our option then?
I don't have an immediate solution for you other than we need to elect officials who believe in campaign finance reform and how that would change this country, and I'm one of those individuals. And hopefully if we do have as big of a turnover as I hope we will in Congress, coming up, that will continue to be a top issue for people, because I really do believe that is a fundamental issue. I mean, my opponent is funded by the Koch brothers. I can't compete with the Koch brothers' pockets.
Neither can we.
And I'm really proud of the fact that while his funding is 80% coming from PACs, we outraised him last quarter, all from individuals like yourselves. All. So, I wish I had the answer for you, and if you have the answer, please tell me. But we need people who are in there who are willing to fight for it and willing to try to find the answer to the problem, not pretend like there isn't a problem.
I'll call you on that one.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for your question. And I'm so sorry, we have a huge event tomorrow, we sold out, I'm so excited, but we gotta go work on that too. So thank you for letting me be here tonight.
I'm gonna direct the question kind of towards Representative Giaquina here. So we just finished the session, and now Governor Holcomb has called in a special session. This kind of goes to our state ledge and state senate candidate as well. Can you give us a brief overview of what this session included, what we passed, what we failed on again, and then why we're calling this special session?
Well, I think most of you saw the headlines in the Journal Gazette was "Session ends in chaos," and I think if you look back as to what's happening, you can look at one simple thing, and it's called redistricting reform. The maps that were drawn after 2010 census were so overly drawn toward the Republicans that you have supermajorities in both the House and the Senate, and it has caused, I think, both the House Republican and the Senate Republicans, for lack of a better term, to get sort of sloppy and cocky in how they do things, how they manage the clock. And as the clock was approaching midnight, they didn't think that we, House Democrats, would do anything about it. We would raise any sort of points of order or anything like that. And they wanted to go they wanted to extend things by an hour. Well, you can't do that. And I think they basically tried to take advantage of the fact that they're in the super majorities. And we didn't let them do that. We said, no, I'm sorry, you messed it up. You don't know how to manage the calendar. There's a clock up here, it's 12 o'clock. I'm sorry, but the session's over. When we went into this session, I think the big headline everybody wanted to see, I guess, wasn't exactly one of my priorities, but it was Sunday alcohol sales. Once we did that, we probably, frankly, could have gone home. It was March 4th, I think, was the first Sunday that folks could buy alcohol. I know it polls very real high and everything like that. But you just heard a whole myriad of issues, in my opinion, that are a lot more important than Sunday alcohol sales. And frankly, we just didn't do enough, I don't believe, to address some of these. Now, I will say this, a couple of the highlights, if you will, were we've seen more kids enrolling in public education than in the past. And so we allocated, it took another $25 million this year and another $75 million for next year. And I don't know, I think it's because of our great teachers that we have here up on stage and in our classrooms, but folks are slowly but surely those that have either had gone into private school or coming back to public education. There were some other bills, this Muncie-Gary takeover thing, that bill died in the end. It was very complicated. In my opinion, not a good idea, basically taking the will of the people that have elected school board and entrusting Ball State University to run the schools there at Ball State, at Muncie schools. Terrible. I mean, just takes away the people's voice to elect their own school board members. There were a couple other things, but really, to be honest with you, this was how did one person put it, like a Twinkie, you take a bite and there's just not much inside. I mean, this was really kind of frankly, kind of a dud session. There were a couple of things that I'd like to have seen regarding some potential funding mechanism for the electric works, the old GE plant down there on Broadway. That got caught up in at the midnight hour as well. So here we are, the governor has called a special session for sometime in May. I'm sure they will have their priority list and things worked out. I talked to a couple of you beforehand. We were talking that, is it even really necessary to go back at a cost of around $30,000 a day? Most of the Democrats, like myself, have said we're not going to take the money for that day because that's ridiculous. Frankly, even though it's not our fault, we would like to see the others, particularly whether a Republican or my fellow caucus members, to join us in that pledge. But that's kind of where we stand right now. And I wish I had better things to report on, but that's where we are.
Well, I know that when Jorge and I went down to lobby for education, we were in the Senate gallery and watching a long debate on sex education and a bill that one of our local state senators, Cruz, had written about sex education, and everybody in the gallery was laughing at it. It didn't represent us. It basically represented him. And a lot of time is spent on personal agendas that really don't help us.
Would that be House Bill 65 you're referring to?
I remember it as Senate Bill 65, which was on the opt-in for sexual education, so that you would have to opt in for anything related to human sexuality, which is so broad.
To essentially prevent an issue like what happened in California, where a kindergarten teacher opted to educate a kindergarten classroom about transsexual, transgender, without permission from parents, and that bill was intended to prevent that from happening in Indiana because of issues like that happening in more and more communities across the country. So why was that bill gutted, reworded to remove parents basically being required to be informed in advance that their kids are going to be taught this controversial material, which at kindergarten is absolutely inappropriate to be teaching your kids?
But it didn't take into account our high school state standards as well. And the way that it was worded, it wasn't taking into account what we are required by the state to teach.
Okay, is there a way to compromise that so that it covers allowing the parents of younger children to opt out of that? Because my understanding is the way it was gutted and reworded essentially removed that complete autonomy of a family, and that I have an issue with. I know my kids aren't public school, but were they public school and they came home saying, we learned about transgender today, I would be like, oh hell no, and I would pull my kids immediately, had I not already pulled them. But it is an important issue. I feel that's relevant.
If you could help me on this, what happened though is that you'll have 3 chances to opt in. So it's still there. It's just that you will have 3 chances to opt in instead of just the one option.
And they will be required to inform parents in advance of this sort of curriculum being presented to
Well,
children?
they send out a letter and you can opt in if you so choose.
They send out 3 letters, correct?
Yes.
3 letters to opt in.
Okay.
I think I like what she said. She said, is there a way that we can compromise to get, she didn't say that, and that's what we need to remember, because everything's so polar. She didn't say, no, I want it, and yes, we have to have it. She goes, is there a way we can compromise to meet in the middle on it? And that's what government needs to be at right now.
So, going back to what Phil was saying earlier, redistricting reform is so important because the problem we have right now is complacency. Our legislators, present company excluded, are complacent. I'm running against Mark Carlisle in the 81st District, and Pat Miller from WOWO asked him right before this session started. He said, this is a short session, you don't have a lot of time to get things done. What is most pressing? What really needs to get done in this short session? I thought Mark Carlisle's answer was really telling because he said that he didn't really think that there was anything that was that pressing, which really spoke to how complacent he is in his seat. He's comfortable and feels comfortable enough to say that there are no stated goals for a legislative session. Our wages are lagging behind the rest of the country. We're actively destroying public education. Women are paid 25% less than men. We still have a hate crimes bill after this session. There are so many things that are pressing, and to just say that, yeah, there's things we can work on. He did find time to file the payday lending bill, which would have allowed payday lending firms to charge 222% interest. But that's the problem when we have complacent legislators, is that there's no clear goal before a legislative session, and then we get to the end and go, oh, we should have done all these things, and then we run out of time.
I want to say, like, as an educator, I think there's parents in the room. If you have a student that had weeks to work on an assignment, and they waited until the last minute to do it, you would call them completely irresponsible. And that, and now this legislature is going to cost the state money. Imagine if your student or your child cost you money because they procrastinated an assignment to the last minute. It is ridiculous. And again, we need redistricting reform. We need election reform in general so we can hold them accountable. There's a lot of legislators at the state level that people don't know who they are when you ask them. Some people pay attention to their direct mail, the mail they get, and they can see, oh yeah, this is my legislator because he's sending me all this mail, which taxpayer funding for that. So you can make of that what you will, if it's actually helping you or promoting them more so in your mind. But at the state level, a lot of people don't know who the legislator is. In my district, it cuts my city council district in half. It's like half of my city council district is part of one state rep district, and the other city council part of the city council district is another state rep district, and my district goes all the way out to Huntington County. So Wayndale, Huntington County, and only part of Wells County. I know we can do a better job. We can create fairer districts, and that is a big priority for me. And I think everyone here would agree we need redistricting reform. And there's just so many other election reforms we can do, making it absentee ballot, getting absentee ballots easier, making registering for voting easier, longer voting hours. Yeah. So there's a lot we can do.
I have another question, Brandon.
Yep, go ahead.
Do you think that Indiana should and is able to make community college tuition free, if not all state colleges? And do you think that would have a positive impact on Indiana, our wage growth, problems with the South Side? Do you think that's something we should strive towards, and can we afford it? I mean, we have all this money for voucher programs. Could we turn that funding to community colleges, if not all state colleges?
I think we can. I think that students already give a lot to be a part of college. I think there should be some encouragement of some kind of direction. People aren't just taking classes just to take classes, but it definitely shouldn't be this expensive. I think we can definitely bring down the cost. People say, oh, if it's tuition free, people won't appreciate it, won't take advantage of it, won't do their best. I don't think that's true. Again, if you're going to class, that's time that you're not working, you're not supporting your family, you're not taking care of children if you have children and you're trying to go back to school. So I think that the people that would take advantage would be people that would actually use it and improve our economy and raise all the boats, and we would all be better for it. So that's my personal take.
My friend Ben Schock and I have had this debate. And I'm actually on the opposite end of that scale, primarily because I'm a firm believer that nothing's free. Somebody somewhere is paying for it, and Ben and I have talked about that multiple ways. I do think someone who currently is holding $70,000 worth of school debt, that there has got to be a better way. I do believe that there has got to be a better way, but if you think about When I think about the amount that I'm paying for my education and we multiply that times the number of people that would have the ability to go to school, it would be a tremendous debt. And so I'm not sure financially, looking at the dollars, if we would be able to fund it. Because one fancy thing about government is that you're supposed to have the money earmarked and set aside. And so the funding element of it, I struggle with. It would be beautiful, especially if we could retroact that thing back to when I started school. That would be wonderful, but I don't know realistically if it would be available.
I think there's certain ways we can make it, that we can afford it. We have something like a $2 billion surplus, and I'm not suggesting that we constantly pull from that surplus, but there's something to be said for underfunding state agencies and not paying for some of these things we can pay for, and then going, look, we've got $2 billion in our bank account. Well, that's great, but there are other things we could pay for. There are other things that we could do, like legalizing medical marijuana. Bring in a ton of tax money. It may not be enough to cover everyone's college tuition, but it's a start. It's something that we can look at. It's not paying for everybody's college is not a non-starter. I think it's something that can be done.
I love the idea, I really do. I do think, though, if we're going to look at kind of the priority spending, let's make sure that pre-K is fully funded, and then we'll go, then full day kindergarten. The reason I guess I look at the results that we've seen from other states that have done that, kids in that 4 to 5 to 6 year old grade, that's when their mind is developing and with shapes and figures and things like that. So if I had to put a priority on it and do that, that's where I'd start with that funding first. But I love that suggestion. I've been reading about some other states that frankly that are starting to move that way toward fully funding the community colleges. It's a good idea, good suggestion.
I lived in a state where our community colleges were just $33 a class. But I will agree with Phil that we're not even fully funding our K through 12. We're not making our children attend school until they're 7 years old. And then the next year they're expected to take an IRE 3 reading test. We have a lot to work, we have a lot of work ahead of us with regard to the K through 12 education issues that we have in our state right now.
Questions?
Yes, good evening. Using the community's voice to make the right choice, that's my campaign slogan, and I've been working with the youth in Parks and Recreation as well as Allen County Court-Appointed Special Advocate and many other organizations like the Urban League, so I mentor a lot of youth, and I actually had some youth in the community tell me that they feel like when a student gets to the 12th grade, maybe they should, instead of just stopping at the 12th grade of public school, offer college classes for those who want to go within the public school system, because, now this is what they're telling me, because I like to listen to the community's voice, but they felt like if they can fund charter schools and other schools, why not go ahead and add 2 more years onto the curriculum so that some of these students will be better prepared to enter into the, the job market, employment field, and be able to support their family. Now this is coming from the youth, so I think that's a great idea, something to think about.
Hello, I wanted to ask, what are we doing for our seniors? I know several people, older people, when they get in the apartments, the rent goes up and they're, they don't have the money. Because I think that they're being forgotten. A lot of them are on fixed income, and I just feel for them. And baby boomers, and they're coming out all the time now. The older generation, we're here. So now, is there anything set aside for maybe a cap on what apartments, because they're building those young apartments, but the rent is like amazing. I'm like, $900 or $1,200 a month for seniors, and most of them are on set income, and I'm like, that doesn't even sound right. So what are we doing for our seniors?
They're all looking at me. Yeah, I mean, we've over the, at least we've tried to advocate for enough money so that, frankly, seniors can stay in their own home as they get older and don't have to go to assisted living. And that those are, in-home health care and things like that. And I think that programs that we can, anything that we can do to support that, that's what I hear mostly from seniors that are getting up there in age. And that's important. You want to be able to keep your independence as long as possible and things like that. So it's definitely been a priority. I believe, at least that from House Democrat candidates, not exactly sure on my counterparts, but that's just something that we've always believed in. That what can we do to make sure that seniors are, as they get older, be able to stay in their own homes.
Yeah, well, in their own homes, a lot of them probably have big houses and they want to move to an apartment setting. But, because then they got the upkeep of the house, things are falling apart at that time. So there's a few senior citizen places, but I know those yellow communities, those are basically for seniors. I believe, I was told that they were basically for seniors. But the rent is sky high, and I'm like, how are they doing that to the seniors? But some seniors, they're listening. A lot of them are. No, all of them are. They don't understand income. So I don't understand. It's really populated.
Sure. Yeah. It's just one of those where it's frankly, it's a budget priority, and I believe again, as House Democrat candidates, that we have to make sure and keep, if the Republicans are writing the budget, we have to make sure that keep them, hold their feet to the fire, make sure that they're putting enough money there for seniors.
For council county, honestly, it's not in our wheelhouse. That's all we do, or all we can do is set taxing credits for new developers to build new houses. But I can tell you as an individual, what I have done when I've met with developers for whether it's GFW or any place, especially for those that I represent, and that's fight to make sure that we have equitable equality. Some of the great projects that have gone on downtown have not been anything that a lot of the people I represent would be able to afford and or take advantage of. And I have been one of the biggest cheerleaders for what about my people? And when I say my people, I mean my community. What about my community? Because a lot of the $1,300, $1,500, $1,600 a month flats that they're building aren't ones that people in my community that I represent can afford. And so I'm always behind the scenes fighting that fight. But in council, all we have the ability to do is to make the path for a business owner in the free market to determine whether or not the taxing system is right. Because the Fair Housing and Fair Credit Act, if it's two, then you can make that complaint there. That would be with HUD or Fort Wayne Housing Authority would be able to come in and help you out in that situation. If you run into one where you feel like the rent is being gouged, you may check with George Guy, who runs that. He may be able to help you out there.
And I want to point out that at Glenn Hines stated the 6 Figure Arrest, which he does for and to really get the southeast side, understanding the work he does, and he mentioned or somebody came up front that works with HUD, George, and he mentioned how the HUD is making some serious cutbacks, and so that there's a big federal component in here when we're talking about the health care costs that seniors are facing. They're working, instead of trying to work on expanding health care, they're working on cutting it at the federal level. And if they cut it, then the state has to deal with HIP 2.0, right? We don't have that anymore. So that, just trying to hang on to what we have as a state, we've got to, and we need new leadership if we're going to actually make progress towards, dealing with these issues.
Next question.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Henry. Thank you. I wanted to take a moment to thank you all for running. I really appreciate all the effort and the time it takes to do that. And to kind of tie it all together, a common thread that I'm hearing in a lot of the discussions is, people have a lot of questions, they want to get involved, and I've put a lot of time and effort personally in, educating myself and becoming more involved and showing up at city council and at, neighborhood meetings and things like that. And one of the things I've also learned is that there were other programs in the past that, through the city that had a little bit more outreach and connection with the neighborhoods and with the individuals. And I may not have all of the information, but from what I understand, a lot of that funding has gone away. Some of those initiatives have kind of fallen by the wayside. What kind of thoughts do you have on how do we bring back some of those programming, and how do we really work a little bit harder to engage our community? Thank you to everyone who's here tonight and taking time out of your Friday night, because this is not always the top thing on everyone's priority to show up and participate in a really fun discussion like this. But I go to a lot of meetings where there aren't that many people who show up to hear about things when they're asking. I don't know how many city council meetings I've sat through where things are proposed and they're like, anyone have any comment? And there's no one there. And I don't know how better to get people involved. And when I looked into it, it seemed like there were a lot of programs that had lost funding or just didn't have, support. And, are there any things that you guys have, identified that you would like to do, or, that we could work towards to, bring back some of that community engagement and involvement and make that more of a priority in our community again?
So for myself, my daughter and I were driving down the Harvester, past the Harvester, and she said, "Mom, what is that big building?" And I said, "It's the Harvester." It was the core of Southeast Fort Wayne at one point in time, and when it went out, Southeast kind of went down. And she goes, "Well, what are they going to do with the building?" And I said, "Honey, I don't know." Sometimes we listen to people and they'll still say, "When the Harvester was there, we did it, da-da-da-da. When the Harvester was there, we had blah, 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 blah." I said, the problem is we have a hard time mentally transitioning because the Harvester's not coming back. And so we have to figure out what's next to bring the Southeast, at least, over the fact that the Harvester is not coming back. At one time, we had what was called the Southside Pride community, where we honored and we promoted businesses that were in the South Side. And we also had our own neighborhood liaison, where we had individuals that we could go to. And at that time is when we had an opportunity for our voice to be heard and where we had direct connection. Now the city as a whole shares the same liaison, who does the best that he can do to try to get every place that he can. But one person can't service all, 250,000 people that are within Allen County. And so those are some things that I would suggest that we reallocate those fundings back to communities so that the community can have those dollars, because everything lies within the community. And if we don't have connection and voice, then you don't have the opportunity to hear what people have to say, which I agree with Linda when she said that, we do need to hear what the community has to say. And if that liaison that we had is no longer there for us to be able to go to, then we've lost something. So I think that that's one plan that needs to go back into place, but it takes a collaborative group. And right now, everybody that's here is a strong Democrat. I'm not sure, and I don't want to assume that everybody in the audience is a Democrat, because that would be naive of me. But it would take all of us to go, whether we're Democrat or whether we're Republican. We want people representation, and we have to push on those that are elected to demand that those funds get allocated back to the right place so that we can start having city representation with just our leaders in that realm. So that's one thing that we can do to help make sure that people are represented.
Go ahead.
So my name is Kathy, and thank you all for being here. I'm beginning to realize how complicated of a system that we have. I mean, I've been trying to be more involved since the election. I'm going to meetings with the Democrats and, trying to come to panels and things like this. We get the Sunday paper, or listen to the radio, we listen to evening news, but it's not enough. Like, when you're talking about what's going on at the state, I don't know I don't understand everything that you're talking about. I don't know where we're at on redistricting. I hear little bits and pieces. Where is the best place for a person to go to be up to date, to get information on what's going on in our community and at our state level?
If I could say something real quick, usually you get like very select stories from what I've seen as far as television. There is local coverage, but usually it's short, not in depth. You don't really get it, and they don't seem to cover everything. Usually when it comes to local issues, I think the newspaper, even though that we know that there's been a move away. And I think that's part of the issue with connecting with local and state issues is that move away from the newspapers. But like the Journal Gazette is still in print. News Sentinel's not in print anymore. It's all online. But those tend to send reporters to stuff like city council meetings, to county council meetings. Really, I don't see reporters from like TV stations or definitely not national news covering those kinds of things. But definitely going on to the Indiana legislature itself website is, going straight to the sources is great. But if you're looking for summaries of what's going on, there's also different groups that send out information. I think League of Women Voters is a good group. On the redistricting, for example, League of Women Voters and Common Cause Indiana are two groups that are working on the redistricting issue. So they try to keep their members updated with emails and different things. So it just depends on the issue as far as what is the best source. But I think in general, I think local newspapers do a good job of getting around as far as coverage. You have anything to say there?
I think your question sort of interrelates to what yours, with kind of both, with regards to what Sharon said, the civic engagement and how can folks be involved. I send out a survey before session starts. I live in my district. I assume some of the, I don't know what the other reps do, but send out a legislative survey of question, about 6 or 7 questions, and what is most important to you, and then how you can continue to be engaged through the process and continue to contact me. So that's, and I don't know where you live, ma'am, but personally, that's, as a legislator, I think that's how you have to communicate as much as possible. And I try to attend the Southeast, Southwest neighborhood partnership. I was at one this past week, other neighborhood association meetings. And we get invited to quite a few forums, and sometimes we think, oh man, you gotta run every other year, but I will say this, it gets us out there, that's for sure. And gets us out there to meet you folks. And but I think it's a good responsibility of candidates and legislators to make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that we're getting out there. If I'm invited to anything, I really give it 110% and try to make it. And but if you don't think you're able to find and follow certain bills and things like that, that means you're probably not alone. And that means we need to do a better job of, I was thinking, maybe we should have a 2-hour session someday on basically walking, folks that are interested, kind of walk through the state website, www.in.gov/legislative. And that way it shows you, you can put in a bill number, you can follow along the bill, you can bring up individual legislators' names and what bills they filed. You can go on during the day and click and watch certain sessions. And you can come down and visit us at the State House. Matt Turner's always down there bugging me every day. Yeah, come down and visit the legislature. It's a great, I talk to so many people that tell me it's the first time they've ever been to the State House. And it's amazing to me. We probably don't do enough to get, some of our, they got to take a day off school, but get the kids to come down 2 hours, and that's too bad. I know the local kids, the kids from around within an hour drive of Indianapolis, they're there all the time too. But you would find it very fascinating, and just to kind of follow a bill, go to a committee session, Pat's group sets up, and you may talk to legislators. So, but that, I don't know, it might not be a bad idea to kind of walk folks through that website and figure out how you would learn a lot.
Thank you.
No stuff on Facebook but it's kind of like you found this and you're here, and everybody found this meeting and they're here in one way. And Miss Henry, I see her at so many different things, and sometimes I'm like, how in the world does she have time to be everywhere? But that's her passion. So everybody directs their attention and their passion differently. And although I may not appear at every city council meeting and see in the seat, I watch it online. And so I know what's going on at the city council, because there's so many things that you have to partake in. You have to decide which one you're going to split your time to for that particular day. But I get my information a lot of times based on the posts that you guys post on Facebook, and then I'll go and read it, but I won't just read that one article. I'll go and search for other articles to pick out which one's fake news and which one's real news.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I'm on Twitter and Facebook, and I follow Republicans, I follow Democrats, because it's not enough for me to just get one side of things. I need both sides to make an informed decision. If you are on Twitter, a good person to follow is Nikki Kelly with the Journal Gazette. She's down there, I don't know, is she down there?
Yes.
She's down there. So she's down there during session, and she does a fantastic job of both the House and Senate side, keeping up with bills and things like that. I think if you go to, if you Google the Indiana Democratic Party, you can sign up for lists, and they may send out some emails and things like that throughout session, just letting you, keeping you updated on things like that.
And I think the more you're involved and the longer you're around, the more you learn. Yeah, because I just hang out with people who are like-minded, and they'll tell me, Jorge will tell me, send me something on Facebook, and read this, and that's how I learn. But Nikki Kelly is a great source. She's housed down there in the basement of the State House, the bowels of the State House, and
Little cubicle.
yes, and she is able to cover that. She does a really good job. And I find our newspaper does a really good job. I will admit that print media is superior to the electronic media in town.
So with that, I just want to take a moment and thank you all again for coming out. I want to thank our panelists. If we can give them a hand real quick for showing up. But it's not just these people that are running. We've actually got several other candidates out in the crowd. So if you are running in 2018, could you stand up to be recognized? Yeah, so if you just start with Linda Brooks. If you just want to start with your name and what you're running for, and then we'll just kind of go around the room so everybody can tell who you are.
I would like to thank the Young Democrats for having this forum. My name is Linda Brooks, and I'm running for Indiana State Representative in the 80th District, and I wanted to quickly address the question about the seniors. They're my passion. I've been involved with them for many years, and one thing about it, as a veteran, I've traveled several countries, and here in the United States, it breaks my heart to see how when our seniors get older, we kind of discard them. But in other countries, it's an honor. They get all kinds of respect. So I think that to help our seniors, maybe there could be some type of legislation that says, okay, if you're 65 years old on your city utility, we're going to remove that $5 or $6 tax off of there, and we're going to use money from the Indiana Hoosier Lottery to make up for what we're losing. Thank you.
My name is Marty Lemert. I am a first-time candidate. I've never run for anything in my life, running for student council. I'm running for state representative against Ben Smaltz in District 52, and that's Northwest Allen County and also DeKalb County region. I want to run against Ben Smaltz because I think he's not doing the right thing with respect to gun violence. He is very much an A-rated A+ rated legislature by the NRA. And my goal would be to bring common sense to our gun laws in the state, to reduce the level of gun violence in the state. I am tired of seeing our flag fly at half-mast with rapid fire frequency. Every time I see it, I think, oh God, who is it this time? Is it police officers? Is it children? Is it students? Is it churchgoers? Is it concert goers? Who's next? And if those representatives, our elected representatives, really respected our flag and what it represents and who that flag represents, they would take actions and not just thoughts and prayers to reduce the number of times that flag flies at half-mast. Because when that flag flies at half-mast, our country flies at half-mast, and our communities fly at half-mast. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Phil Davis, and I'm running for Allen County Sheriff. It has been 80 years since we've had a Democrat as a sheriff, so I think it's maybe about time we evaluate how the Republicans are running that office. Thank you.
Curtis.
I'm sorry, Curtis. I'll be back.
Good evening. My name is Pat Turner, and I'm running for Wayne Township's board. I've been on the board for the past 8 years. This will be my 3rd term if re-elected. So I'd love to have your vote if you live in Wayne Township.
I'm going to grab you since I'm all the way up here, and then I'll go back to Curtis.
My name is Chris Rex. I'm running for state representative of District 85, which is to say New Haven-ish area, including right here. The only thing I'd really like to add to anything that was previously discussed was namely relating to education, since education is basically my life as well. With regards to education, the question was brought up by my wonderful wife, as far as whether it was feasible to consider college being free at any point in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to point out that the tax bill that was relatively recently passed that gave huge tax cuts to wealthy people and corporations is going to end up costing the country $1.6 trillion. 1.5 or $6 trillion just so happens to be the amount of student loan debt in this country.
You're here.
Just think about that for a bit. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Curtis Nash, running for 84th State House District, currently held by Bob Morris. I wouldn't go against anything what Bob Morris says. I'm a little different. I just think I represent a larger part of the population. And things I would put on my agenda as being more urgent are the marijuana legalization. Not just for all the things you've heard, but also to combat the opioid epidemic. It's in states that it is legal. It's dropped it by 34% at the like 600 districts, I think they said the number was. Also, voter reform is an urgent thing for me. Stop privatizing state services, another thing for me. And just for fun, if we don't talk about infrastructure that much, usually they mean repairing the roads and stuff like that. For me, I would think I would like to see passenger rail come to Indiana. Yeah. Just for the safety of people, the highways are a mess, and all they do is fix them every couple of years. And also infrastructure, get rid of coal for our power completely. That way we won't have coal ash and water. I know. I think that's it.
First of all, this young man has had his hand up until his arm's about to fall off. So I promised him he'd get to ask his question before I speak.
Hello, my name is Liam Thomas. I've really been concerned about my family and other people that currently do not have vehicles like cars and motorcycles and stuff like that. I've always been concerned about people that don't have cars, about traffic safety. Every time I go on a very busy road, I'm always concerned that someone is gonna get hit. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Carol Griffin. I'm running for trustee of St. Joseph Township. And if you have any questions, please check my blog. I have extensive information about anything you ever wanted to know. I just wanted to address every person who's running for anything. Serving the public is not a one-time job, it's a full-time job. I know our legislators meet for a couple of months, and I may not be exactly on this, but you have a short session and a long session, but we have 12 months in the year and more. And if you don't get the information when you get down to the legislature, I'm sure you can find plenty of things to read about and get involved in things before you go down there. It's just not a 1 month, 2 month. Everybody has to stick with it. And this young man here, I don't know exactly where you're coming from, but the township trustees are supposed to be helping take care of the poor. So if you have a problem, you should be able to go to them, and they should be able to help you, and they should be able to direct you to other places that can be of help to you. There's a great amount of budget money from trustees that don't go to help the poor, and I thought that's what it was all about. So I'll have to tell you right now, I'm learning a lot. I don't know everything. I was a teacher for 41 years, and then I got really retired. And then I got more tired, and now I've come out of retirement. So there's a lot to do, and not one person can do it all. You need friends. You need to talk to your neighbors. I'm president of our community association where I live. And it's so difficult to get people involved. I have a wonderful board, and we do wonderful work. But where's all the rest of the people with input? And why aren't we taking care of our kids? I think we should do more for our children. And if they have their hand up for a half an hour, we ought to let them speak. So whoever's next.
I would like to say something too about these, I'm sorry.
Can we clap?
I would like to say something about these two boys who are here, because when we're talking about community and the way children are being raised, I see somebody over there who's raising her children to have really big hearts. And to their mother, you're doing a great job.
Commissioner. So the seat I'm running for right now is being warmed by Linda Bloom. She's not running again for lack of much activity. So I want to get in there and show that it is a full-time job, that you need to be a little more active, I think, than a lot of our commissioners have been. And yeah, if you have any questions about anything like what does the commissioner do, that's a good question to ask me. I can tell you it quickly, and that way I'm not taking up a bunch of time here, but it's the same thing as it's the executive branch of the county is the shortest answer, and if you want any more details and stuff, I'd rather you just talk to me than going on and on here. So, thank you, and thanks for showing up, guys, and thanks for having me.
Hello everybody, my name is Ben Schock. I soon hope to sit next to Ms. Sharon Tucker here about next year. I am running for Allen County District 2. And if you have any further questions on what that office does, come see me afterwards. I don't want to take up any more of your time tonight.
We're going to have our panelists introduce themselves one more time just so you know who they are before we go.
Okay, Jorge Fernandez, running for State Representative, District 50.
Sharon Tucker, I'm running for re-election for Allen County Council 1st District. And I would just like to say, the first time that I ran, my message was that I would be a voice for my community. And I never made any promises that I didn't keep. I have been a tremendous voice as the sole Democrat, as the sole female, and as the sole African American on County Council. I have not been afraid to speak truth to power, and I have not been afraid to speak for my community. I will continue to do that with your support, and I will continue to speak for those of us that are right now the underdog until we are able to be my majority, because we can flip, we were blue one time, and we'll continue to work together. I will continue to listen to the community because I believe that that's what we should do. And the young man who walked away and said, what about the safety of the streets? You're raising dynamic kids, and at this age, they're concerned about things that I'm not so sure I was concerned about when I was their age.
He has background for that. We ride our bikes almost everywhere we go, including an 11-mile bike ride to Scouts once a week, and 11 miles back home. And because of the way they have set up the detour at Wells Street, because of a lack of lighting, because our I don't know if it's city or district, are not very good at checking the bike paths during flooding. We have almost been hit many times, and not because we are in any way at fault, but because drivers are not aware and there is not sufficient safety measures in place for us as cyclists. And it is a real concern because we have almost been hit, I would say 8 or 9 times now, and at one point they were this far from this one. So it is a real
It's
concern
a big
for
concern.
us. And it should not be a concern. There should be
Right.
safe crossings, there should be lighting, there should be those wheelchair ramps on the corners should not be set 20 feet back from a corner so people think you're turning instead of trying to cross a road.
See me after the meeting if you would, so we can get you in contact with Kent Castleman, who is part of Fort Wayne Trails. Those are things that I'm not sure if they're aware of that need to be taken care of. And it's that kind of, if I could have just a liberty for a few moments. When I first ran, it's like, there's so many things you want to do and you think you could do, and there's so many things that the public thinks that elected officials can do, and sometimes the system is set up where you can't. But that information that you just shared right there, without you coming to say that, we wouldn't know. But I can direct you to the person who would be able to help get us the answer, whether or not they can make that change, but we could at least make them aware of that information. And that's what we as a community, that's what I mean when we say we work together, because we can do those things. So I'm in a place to be able to know who handles those things. You know what's going on. Now let's come together so we can go and figure out how we can get it fixed. So anyway, I'm Sharon Tucker, 1st District. Listen, you guys, don't be a sucker. Vote for Tucker.
I have to follow Sharon Tucker. My name is Kathy Zuha, and I'm running for State Senator, District 15.
I'm Kyle Miller, I'm running for State Representative, District 81.
And I think to wrap it up, I am Phil Giaquinta, running for re-election for District 80. Just very quickly, my focus has always been on strengthening public education, lifting the middle class by working very hard, doing everything I can every day to make sure folks are earning a livable and a really great wage. And then finally, it has been difficult, I have to admit, being in the super minority, but I've been fortunate enough to get some bills through and passed and signed into law. This past session, I didn't know it, but I was honored with the Civility and Government Award, and I was kind of quite pleased. It surprised me, but I think hopefully it shows that I have the ability to work across the aisle despite being a minority to get things done for House District 80, Fort Wayne, and the state of Indiana. Thanks everyone for showing up tonight. We all appreciate it.
With that, on your way out, please take a pizza because I got too much. But feel free to mingle with everyone around here. If you have questions for specific candidates, you can feel free to ask them. But with that, we are all done. So thanks again for coming out.